Should you buy Rise of Industry? Well, it depends, and here's why. Rise of Industry is a management game, focused less on aesthetics and citizen needs as SimCity is, and more managing the intricate production lines to maximize your profit margin and dominate the market. The number-heavy gameplay will entice some, but others will be instantly repelled. It's easy to fail in Rise of Industry if you attempt to avoid the careful planning and strategizing in the game. You're thrown into this large, rectangular piece of land containing multiple towns, each with a population somewhere between 60,000 and 120,000 people. Each town has 2 Tier 1 stores. By clicking on these, it'll show the demand for various goods. Initially, your goal is to produce these goods for a profit, while being careful not to oversell, because you don't want to waste any money. As you supply more products or resources to the town grows and levels up, opening a Tier 2 store. Tier 2 stores have a demand for items which have been run through a factory and produced into something more than a raw resource. For example, wooden planks are a Tier 2 because it requires a raw resource, wood, and a factory to create. As the game progresses, you enter the gameplay loop. Your main goal is to take out the competitors, but as long as you purchase enough permits for other towns, they aren't too much of a challenge. You're constantly trying to research and create new products to attempt to push yourself and your profit even further to combat your ever-growing production costs. This is the entire game. It's a loop of creating and selling products as your empire grows and your factories take over the map. After hours of gameplay, you create a prototype factory, which is essentially an endgame factory. Your profits skyrocket and you laugh at the AI for building 60 farms and going bankrupt. This game is my favorite game to come out of this economy management genre. It incorporates Factorio-like factory gameplay and the money management gameplay, similar to classics like Capitalism 2. The enticing gameplay loop satisfies my nerdy crave for a money-based game, and it becomes simple to follow after the first few hours of gameplay. The Rise of Industry world is easy to get lost in and really becomes its own as you progress. Something this game does very well is the difficulty customization, meaning you can choose to either relax and play the game without too much struggle, or you can test your skills in an erratic, challenging market. This is a key feature to a game like this, because it lets new players in without overwhelming them with complex and difficult gameplay, and its simple, intuitive implementation means that players can target specific areas of the game to make easier or harder. This component alone encourages people who aren't as much fans of the genre to instead buy the game as more of a sandbox game, for focusing less on profits and more on creativity. Now for the most important aspect of the game. How do you play? You're set up with a couple of $1 million, and your initial goal is to simply turn a profit. Doing this gives you something to fall back on. For example, your town's name may be Stalingrad and they have a farmer's market. In this farmer's market, they will sell 6 fields worth of carrots each month, so it's your job to provide that. Each farm can have 3 fields with no upgrades, and each field uses 2 water to produce 1 carrot every 30 days. So to meet the demand, you need 6 fields and they will need 12 water. A water well can have up to 3 harvesters with no upgrades, and each harvester produces 1 water every 12 days. That means 1 harvester produces 5 water every 60 days, or 2.5 water every month. This means you'll have 1 extra water every 30 days. If that short into some of the math intrigued you, this game will definitely be for you. Incorporating costs of transport and building into that makes it a mathematical playground for some. If that seemed interesting but a little too complicated, that's okay too. This game allows you to round each of the harvesting time to a multiple of 15, making it much easier to get your head around. If that kind of talk really didn't appeal to you, but you're still interested in creating your own farms, the sandbox modes might be more for you. But if none of that was interesting, this game will not be for you. Its common confusion with games like SimCity mean that it normally gets a bad rap for being more number heavy, when, in actuality, it's far away from SimCity's genre. The progression in the game is fairly quick and enjoyable if you play your cards right initially. A good setup at the start can have a huge impact on the rest of your game. If you're fully engrossed in the game, you'll find that there's constantly lots to do, without anything being too much of a burden. If you've played the game well, then there should generally be nothing from stopping you to just let the factories generate money while you sit back and bathe in the satisfaction of a well-engineered production line. However, this isn't the case too often. Normally, you're relocating, repositioning, and editing your previous buildings to move around the growing cities. Sometimes you're being constantly bugged with notifications that generally implied that a cluster of farms was poorly planned and now they're all full of excess resources. It's stressful, because if one thing goes wrong, it's up to you to identify and solve the problem while you continue to expand your operations across new cities and towns. The bottom left of your screen is constantly filling up with ominous red rectangles, and it is not what you want to see. And normally it's easier to simply demolish your previous operations than it is to actually attempt to fix anything. The gameplay is intuitive and fun to learn and play, but one small mishap can send your entire empire falling and fill your screen with so many notifications it encourages you not to play. But if you can get around that, you're sure to find the gameplay enjoyable for the most part. Each time you open the game, it runs a little video as an introduction. It's interesting, but somewhat annoying after a while. But it's very good at instantly conveying what type of game it is. It explains the constant push for the market, the detrimental impact small things can have on your company, and the fact that this game is not and doesn't try to be for everyone. It also shows the simple, aesthetically pleasing art style that accompanies this game. The game's sleek UI, put together with the fluid animations and crisp shading effects, makes it genuinely enjoyable to simply watch your empire grow. Each small factory is distinguishable, which makes it easy to navigate your production line. The UI in the game is presented really well. A lot of other games that are number heavy tend to throw numbers and words at you without any graphic or indication of what they actually refer to. This game's visuals are perfect at conveying specific components of the game, which is intuitive and enhances your entire experience with the game. It's easy for games like this to lack replayability. Because of a relatively simple concept, they can fail to spice it up and provide enough content to warrant another playthrough of the game. But what consists of a playthrough? The game contains 3 $50 million factories called prototype factories, which require masses of materials to produce their product. A completed playthrough is successfully engineering an entire empire oriented towards a specific factory, and then mass-producing prototypes to earn upwards of $10 million a month. Some players incorporate all 3 factors into their playthroughs as well, but I don't consider that to be a regular goal, and therefore, to complete this game, you must have 1 working prototype factory. Once you reach this goal, you feel accomplishment because what you've just done is incredibly satisfying. I only reached this goal once on an offline playthrough over the holidays just recently, and it took many hours to get to. Only 1.5% of players complete the car prototype, the most complex prototype in the game. After you've reached that, however, there's no real motivation to start the game again. It's addicting to play it initially, but after you complete it once, there's no reason for you to do it again. Some players may disagree because they will always find enjoyment in calculating distribution plans and creating an empire. And for the most part, it's fun to do. After you finish, you have the option to raise your difficulty settings, purchase the DLC, or put the game down. I endorse the third option, because the end of the game, although not an official end because of the lack of any storyline, it feels natural for the game to end as it does. You don't need any replayability from this kind of game, and yet it still supplies it to you through the customizable difficulty settings. So in short, yes, this game is replayable. It's enjoyable to start from the beginning, and if you're a fan of the gameplay, you won't be disappointed after your initial playthrough. Even if you don't choose to replay it, the game still offers upwards of 50 hours of gameplay. In conclusion, if this game is for you, this game is really for you. This game targets a specific audience and delivers well. If my gameplay, my thoughts sound appealing, don't hesitate to buy this game. You will sink many hours into this game. Although the price tag is hefty for an indie game, about 30 USD, it's definitely worth it for anyone who is interested. But if you've watched to this point in the video and you've decided this game isn't for you, then I hate to break it to you, but this game isn't for you. Not only can it be frustrating, but it's also slow-paced and heavily reliant on meticulous planning, which can be tedious for many. I loved this game, and I'm sure many people do, but ultimately, it's not for everyone. If you're on the edge and you've liked games like this, then give it a go. If you've liked reviews like this, go on down to that subscribe button and really beat it up. Click like and even go into the comments to tell you what you thought. I'd love to hear it. Suggest any game for me to play or review in the future, and, most of all, have a good day. Thanks.